Peace, family. It's your brother Ishmael Law, More Than Words. And I definitely want to welcome the family for coming and checking us out this evening. I have a very, very special guest. And the topic we're going to be dealing with is Moorish as a social political birthright. And our guest tonight is Brother Sharif Ishmael Bey, longtime comrade and friend of Amir Squad African Moorish Scholarship.
Right.
1 second. Hold on 1 second, family. Just getting this taken care of right quick. Let's see what we got here. Okay. We're working it out, Brother Sharif. Hold on 1 second. All right, Brother Sharif, you with me?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, let's see, we got this here. Yes, okay. All right, we got it here. All right, so a part of the topic, what we're dealing with is Moorish as a social political birthright, and there are various ways that one can, depending on the time and the context, is something that we always stress. Is that right, brother?
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah. So the Moorish identity and the application of Moor and how it's applied either by self or by someone outside of self context is so very important. This particular aspect, we're dealing with the social political birthright of Moor. And I think that this is very important. Some of the historical cases of it clearly being just social political lineage per se. So I would say, like a good prime example would be Brother Abdul Rahman in his particular case. Some information on that based upon the movie like Prince Amongst Slaves. Sharing maybe some of what that history is about, Brother Sharif?
Well, what I'd like to do is, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting starting point. Abdul Rahman, according to records, was born in what we would now call, the Republic of Guinea, but in those days was the city-state of Timbo, right? And his father, was one of the main powers or influences in what was called, there was a confederation of sorts in 1776. An Islamic confederation, basically. Right? Now, that in and of itself, and again with the area, the Republic of Guinea, right? From an ethnic perspective, Abdul Rahman wouldn't be considered a Moor from an ethnic perspective. But the political reach of the empire during that time reached the area in which he inhabited and where he was from. You see? So there's the connection, or at least from the perspective of the West. That was the connection. Yeah. So and again, it goes back to what you and I have talked about a number of times, and what you and I have tried to get other people to understand a number of times. And that is, okay. And that is, there is, the intertwining of Moorish ethno-history and the intertwining with the political development of the political entity, the Moorish Empire.
Right.
So, it doesn't surprise us, or it doesn't phase us when we look at other empires. Let's say the Roman Empire, which you know that ethnically was run by European Romans or Romans, right?
Right.
But included other people, other ethnicities, other quote unquote racial groups, other people of different,
Yes, it did.
different origin. And those
Right.
people, because they were under the political influence of the empire, were considered Roman citizens.
Mm-hmm.
See? So ethnically, they may have been one thing, but because they at the time they were under the influence or subjects of the
Right.
Roman Empire, then from that perspective, they were considered Roman. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, and I think that's very significant. The way you explained that was great. You know, Abdul Rahman basically allowed the public to fill in the blanks without necessarily saying that he was a Moor. He wrote it in Arabic. He wrote his letters in Arabic, the letters that he was writing for his freedom.
Yeah.
So they knew that he had to at least be Muslim, and then they assumed that he was Moorish. And then he would dress up, and they would dress him in the Moorish garb, so he was very flamboyant. So he sold it as if he was a Moor, and he even submitted a letter to the Sultan of Morocco for his freedom.
Correct.
So he fell under the jurisdiction, a political and social jurisdiction, as you accurately pointed out, of being Moorish, which is why it's important when we show people Moors during this time, because people need to understand that Abdul Rahman, he was in Natchez. So that's why we were emphasizing in some of our teachings the Natchez court records of what a Moor is, because he fell into the jurisdiction as being a Moor.
Yes, he did.
So his social political status, he fell under this protection because they labeled him a Moor in the Natchez courts. Correct. So I thought that was very significant as far as just being able to identify someone who's not necessarily of that direct ethnic group, but still falling under that protection.
You know, in a number of our team ups, either separately, or disjointedly, not separately, but more together, against others, who would, who take issue with, either scholastically or personally, who take issue with, Moorish history and Moorish identity. Right?
Yes, sir.
That is one of the, it's very difficult to have an intelligent conversation with someone who doesn't fully understand the topic and the terms and the conditions of the topic being discussed.
Yes, sir.
Your area, which is amazing, your area of expertise that I'm amazed at, is your very, very astute and detailed chronicling of Moorish identity from the ethno-historic perspective. It's like incredible. And of course, when you hear the term nationality determines political status, and so we're talking about a socio-political identity,
right?
Of course, ethnic. There's an ethnic component.
Yes, it is.
Right, there's an ethnic component. We can't deny that. The Roman Empire was ruled by people who were ethnically Roman or racially Roman. You know what I'm saying? The Moroccan Empire was no different. You had the ruling party that was ethnically Moors. You know what I'm saying? But the influence of the ruling party extended so vast and extended into different areas. And so that's why we say so ethnically, is everybody here Moors? No. But from the socio-political perspective, you see, from the socio-political perspective, just like the example you gave with Abdul Rahman Ibrahim, Ibn Sori, with him, that's why in Prophet Drew Ali's teaching it says, why are we Moorish-Americans? Because we're descendants of Moroccans born in America. But when you only know of one type of descent nature, it can be confusing.
Yes.
But when you use the term nationality, it's social political, but within it, of course, there's the ethnic piece.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's powerful. So it's getting people there first, and a lot of our people who have issues with Moorish identity is because of their ignorance, not just of ethno-history, but their ignorance of the rise and fall of empires, and then the change into what Drew Ali called a new era of time. In other words, from the time of empires to the time of nation states. Now, even in Africa, a lot of us, especially Afrocentric thinkers, fail to acknowledge that the nation states that you see on the African continent today, most of them are no older than 1883 with the Berlin Conference.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? Prior to that, you didn't have nation states. You had empires.
Very good point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, you know, and so this is a very important point. And so
yes, sir.
Gap in our education a lot of times is understanding, you know, imperial history, you know, history of empires, you know, and how that operated, and then how things switch from empires to nation states in this era of time.
Now, when we're dealing with like America and the way that America was formed itself, I know we used to deal with like the Moorish circle of mothers and sons and things like that. They were very heavy into the Moorish presence in the like the Revolutionary Wars or the early inceptions of America, continental America, and then going into the other phase of actually becoming the United States, etc. What are some of the presence of Moors, of the Moorish presence that you've seen or identified, other than the fact, of course, that Morocco was the first country to acknowledge the United States as a country itself? What were some of the things that kind of really stood out to you on that? Is there anything that really stands out to you?
Well, there's a number of things that, first, that right there is big. You know,
right.
French. As a matter of fact, I want to kind of start with what a lot of people don't really recognize or know about the circumstances surrounding that treaty. There's a book written by an excellent book written by Ray Irwin. You can actually find free copies of it, PDF online. The book is called The Diplomatic Relation Between the United States and the Barbary Powers from 1776 to 1816. So it's in this book that you see he very adeptly paints the picture of the environment that gave rise to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship and why it was so significant. You know, during that time period, Europeans had a very, very hard time even sailing up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States.
Yes, sir.
And not just raided, but the occupants being enslaved and sold into slave markets in the Mediterranean.
Right.
He accounts how the Moorish corsairs would sail up into the British Isles and in some cases depopulate the entire island and sell these into slavery.
Yes,
it was crazy. But at the same time, it says the Barbary powers. There were a number of them. There were a number of quote unquote Moorish, regencies. There was Tunis, Algiers, Morocco. There were a number of them, and they didn't all get along. You know what I mean? They didn't all get along. But nevertheless, European powers all paid tribute money to them.
Right.
They all paid tribute money. And so, it was through these issues that, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, where Morocco was one of the regencies that openly recognized the 13 colonies as an independent nation, independent of England, via the treaty, via signing the treaty.
And that's why it's so important, because that's how you get put on.
Correct.
So somebody has to vouch for you. If nobody, they were saying for quite a while, we're a nation. Nobody was acknowledging that. Somebody's got to put you on and say, I'm vouching for them, and have a little muscle. You say, I'm vouching for him. That means that, obviously you're not in the club and you're trying to join the club.
That's right.
So somebody with muscle has to say, "This is my guy."
That's right.
You know?
So
that's how important that was.
That's so powerful. I mean, it's so significant that the United States Post Office, the United States Post Office did, you remember back in '86, did a bicentennial, a bicentennial celebration, and they did a celebratory, stamp talking about this. And then in the booklet for the stamp, it says that we commend and honor Morocco for breathing the first breath of life into the budding nation that's called the United States.
Correct, as well as the speech by Barack Obama, the clear acknowledgement of this also.
Isn't that something?
Right.
That's huge in the context. It's huge in a number of contexts, or in the context of, number one, international affairs as it relates to England and the United States.
Right.
At that time period, it showed that, as you put it, a boss of both of them, the boss of both of them, said, nah, England. Yeah, they're in. That's
right.
One.
Right.
And then two, it's really significant in the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing in connecting that history to our legacy, and to our history. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
It truly is, and that's why I try to emphasize things like that first time that Black and Moor was using English. That statement that I am a Black Moor born in Barbary. That's a bold statement.
Bold.
And it's a very significant statement, because he's not saying that I'm a Black Moor. He's saying I'm a Black Moor born in Barbary. That's huge. So that's acknowledging that these Black Moors were born in the ruling area during that particular time. They were running everything.
Ain't that something, brother?
As far as taxing everybody, putting the tariffs on everything,
which is where the term, as a matter of fact, Ray Irwin's book, he's talking about how Captain Bainbridge was reluctantly delivering the tribute money to the Bey of Algiers. And the Bey of Algiers basically said, you pay me tribute money, so you're my slave.
Yes.
And so they called the tribute money blackmail. That's where the word actually comes from. Got you.
Totally makes sense. Sense.
Yeah.
Right. I posted up a link in the back. Are you able to put that on the share, brother? Is an article I post on there, and then I can kind of read it. Sure, I can read into the record. Change. Okay.
Definitely share that. There we
go. Thank you, brother. And then the name of this article is "The Secret Black History of the Revolution." It says, as we know all too well, the Revolutionary War was not fought so that all men could get free, but its role in creating the seeds of abolition should not be forgotten. So as we go down to the second paragraph, it says, but perhaps in contrast to its long history of racist exclusion, the daughters of the American Revolution should first honor Black patriots as George Daniel Floor, a German private who fought in the decisive battle Yorktown with the French Royal Do for the Patriots, noted while around the battlefield the next day, all over the place and wherever you look, corpses lying that had been buried. The larger part of these were Moors. So this Battle of Yorktown, he says that the larger part, meaning the majority of these Black people, well, he calls them Moors, Mooring. Right. That's German for Moors.
Right.
They don't tell you this. They don't tell you this aspect of this German was fighting for the Americans. And looking across this battlefield and seeing the majority of the dead people, he's describing them as Moors from his own words. That's a direct quote.
That's right.
You need to understand the context of where these Moors were in these American revolutions. Because as this American Revolution was taking place, there were Moors on both sides.
That's a fact.
Correct. Absolutely. So people need to understand that Floor, being a German fighting for the Americans, he was against racism because the Germans were heavily influenced by a Khan Moor in Germany. This Khan
Yes, sir.
fought for the rights of Moors in Europe. So these Moors that were fighting for in the American Revolution, they were hired as basically mercenaries, but they were paid the same exact amount as the white Germans. They were given the same exact accommodations and moved up the same ranks as the other Europeans, because they had an understanding due to the prior work of this Moor that was riding for their rights. So I just think that that's very important to understand, that the eyewitnesses, you have to be able to go farther and understand who Anton Wilhelm Amo is. You know, to understand how important he is. The number one is a very influential Mason also over in Europe. But this Akan Moor was very significant in those writings, and I have some writings on that available on Facebook. So please feel free to just pull up Ishmael Bey and then Anton Wilhelm Amo, AMO, and get that information. But again, this is just a part of the history. They don't tell you about the Moors' presence in the American Revolution on that level.
I seem to remember you mentioning the Khan tribal or Khan ethnic ethnic designation with Moor synonymously or connected at least.
Yeah, correct. You'll find out later on, like the Akans are very significant presence in the Maroon populations.
Yes.
So you deal with the what they call Coromantans. Coromantans, and the Coromantans are these Akan people, and we have the connections of Maroons and Moors, even like linguistically, and the use of it. So you'll find some people who will say that it derives from a variation meaning Moroccan man, Maroon. You find other people that says that it means like runaway or wild.
Yes, sir.
So various other uses of it, but you find that connection with the Akan culture and those of Ghana and the Moorish identity. Absolutely, sir.
Outstanding. I mean, even going back on the whole ethno-history piece or the ethno-history direction, the Akan are located in West Africa. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes. They're in Ghana. Yes.
Okay, there you go. So that's powerful. So for a people, in West Africa, now I'm speaking to the detractors that have that come from the Afrocentric thinking,
yes,
and who would say that West Africans are all, have no quote unquote Afro-Asiatic roots. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And Moors are quote unquote an Afro-Asiatic people, or and then with the Afrocentric, and I'm speaking to the flaw in Afrocentric thinking of using European imperialist terminologies and definitions.
Yes, sir.
So when you hear Afro-Asiatic, which is a language group,
yes, it is.
They start to speak of it as they start to think of it as a race or a sub-race, or you know what I mean? Instead
correct.
Of what it, but at the same time, have no problem with saying, well, you know what, the Hebrews were quote unquote black people, but the Hebrews are an Afro-Asiatic people because they speak an Afro-Asiatic language.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then, but then we have a lot of history or a lot of information now coming out even more and more about Hebrew groups like the Igbo, and like some people say some of the Akan people, they're in West Africa, but show Afro-Asiatic links.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I thought that was really significant because what it does, it kind of shoots holes in that whole.
Right.
Well, our people here in America are only sub-Saharan Africans.
Right. One important part of the overall history that you show and that you teach on um, is laying the framework of the church or the Pope versus the Moors.
Mm.
Can you share some of that history, kind of give a backdrop of why the laws are designed a certain way? Are we at war? Do we not realize that we're at war, or is that just a figment of our imagination, bro?
Bro, I'm working on a paper right now. Oh man, you must be psychic. I'm working on a paper right now that deals with this very topic, but it starts with, the paper starts with, and the foundation of the paper is taking a look, a critical analytical look at today's America, and looking at, on one hand, the sharp rise in Islamophobia, and on the other hand, the sharp rise in overt racial hostility towards the people that identify or are identified as Black and African American. Okay. And then drawing historical parallels to see if those two sharply rising trends are connected. Now, with your background in history and your study and mine, we both know the answer. But it's like in higher mathematics, you're given the solution, you're given the problem, then you're given the solution, but you got to show your work. So,
yes, sir.
So what the paper is going to do is walk people through this hidden part of history. The fact of the matter is if you research doctrine of discovery, which is about leads and segues into answering your question. If you do a thorough research of doctrine of discovery, European doctrine of discovery and manifest destiny, you will see that Islamophobia today's Islamophobia, Inquisitionist thinking. And it is the root of both American racism and today's Islamophobia. The root, both of them. In other words, overt racism towards our people here in America was born out of medieval Roman Catholic Islamophobia against our forefathers in the 15th century. It was born out of that. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So now to answer your question directly, during our forefathers' rule, and let me, in Spain, and let me stop right there for a second. I want a couple things to say about that. What you have when you hear people say, "Well, there was no Moorish Empire," and that's, first of all, it's laughable. It's too well documented. It's just way too well documented. And the point, and you made a very simple point to addressing the faulty psychology of the detractors. You said, okay, well, the Moors ruled Europe from Spain, ruled the known world from the 8th century all the way up until the 15th century, right?
Right.
You think that they're the ruling party, but they let somebody else name them? Like, come on. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But here's the fact. What you had was a political, again, ruled by a particular ethnic party, ethnic group.
Right.
But what you had was an African diasporic political confederation that went up into Europe. And even before they went up into Europe, but especially when they went up into Europe, at that time period, they ruled the known world.
Right.
It was an African empire that ruled the known world. But now when you look at the time period, people, we're talking from the 8th century to the 15th century. The 15th century, that time period is what we call the old world, especially in the terms of Western civilization. That was old world Western civilization.
Yes.
The new world civilization, Western civilization, was birthed out of that old world civilization. And the bottom line is that old world civilization was Moorish. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And out of that was born in 1492 the beginning of the New World Order. Didn't start with Bush making no speech. The New World
Right.
started with the New World Order started with the New World. It wasn't discovery of anything from the physical perspective of the word discovery. It was discovery under the doctrine of discovery for the Catholic Church.
Right.
That was easing of previously held Moorish territories by the Christian powers. Now, again, it all started in 1442 with a papal bull called Ilias Qui. And that papal bull authorized the military Christian order on the Order of Christ, which was Portuguese, to raid North and West Africa, the North and Northwest Africa coast, and West Africa coast, which at that time was under the control of the empire, the Moroccan Empire. And this was deemed as a new crusade against the Moors. This was the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. The next papal bull that was significant in this case was Dum Diversus. Dum Diversus and Romanus Pontifex, both of these. Dum Diversus then called for the denationalization of these African or these Moorish captives. In other words, to render them subject to perpetual servitude. We see this in the movie Amistad. The crux of the whole case was, what was their names before they were changed on the ship manifest? You know what I'm saying? Because that would give them a link to a homeland. And we don't mean homeland as physical land. We mean homeland as in political mother, a nation. See? And that was the crux. If you know, and so the papal bull Dum Diversus sought, gave the order to erase what they call to bring them to a point of, in the Latin, is called nullus filius, which means absent of heritage, absent of ancestry. You see, so if you rid them of a past, you can never count them as a people in law.
Right.
This is the beginning of what a lot of people in the Moorish movement call, civilis mortus, dead in the eyes of the law. You have no heritage.
That's correct.
You're not capable of carrying a heritage because you have no past. And that's what started that, was Dum Diversus. Then there was Inter Caetera. There's a number of them, but these series of papal bulls formed the core of what's called doctrine of discovery. And doctrine of discovery, literally was the basis of how the European West viewed anything African. That was the basis of it. And that's the foundation of modern day American racism. That is the foundation.
And I want to emphasize that because it's applied to indigenous or Native Americans also. So it started off as being applied to Africans, over to even be used Native Americans. You're in the Syracuse area, is that correct?
Absolutely, brother.
And I have a post that's in the back, which is dealing with the doctrine of discovery and its use.
Yes, sir.
To read to the people, just so they understand how relevant this is. This doctrine of discovery that Brother Sharif is talking about is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. Basically, again, giving the European quote unquote legal rights to perpetuate white supremacy.
Absolutely.
And being from the Syracuse area, one of the most prominent tribes around there are the Oneida tribes.
Yes, sir.
And there was a part where the Oneidas wanted to purchase land and just say, this is now Indian territory. It's now tax-free. Owners of it, and we don't have to pay. And the United States said, no. I'm just going to come and take all the land. And we have a right to this. So, Brother Sharif, are you able to post up that link at all?
Hold on, let me see.
Yes, sir. So the doctrine of discovery.
Oh yeah. Good link. Good link. Hold on. Let me share the let me share it so everyone can see it.
Sure.
Yes,
What it says is the doctrine of discovery. What's that? And since the doctrine of discovery after repudiation, we're talking about the doctrine of discovery. It says it starts off saying that the papal bulls of the 15th century gave Christian explorers the right to claim lands that they discovered and lay claim to those lands for Christian monarchs. Any land that was not inhabited by Christians was available to be discovered, claimed, exploited, and if the pagan inhabitants could be converted, they might be spared. If not, they would be enslaved or killed. That's very important because once you do understand how it was first being applied, you would have conquistadors landing in Florida or landing in South America, opening up these scrolls with natives looking at them and not even understanding what the hell they're saying.
mm-hmm.
And they would start reading off the laws of the doctrine of discovery, saying basically, this is our land now.
Mm-hmm.
We have a right to kill you. We're doing this in the name of Christianity.
That's right.
And it's ours now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the indigenous people, not understanding any of this stuff, would invite them to food and to fellowship, not understanding that they were just read in some foreign language the rights of these people who arrived in armor to murder them and burn them and lynch them and
Right.
take anything that they wanted.
Right.
So at the end of this particular article, it states that this doctrine governs United States law today and has been cited as recently as 2005 in the decision of City versus Sherrill versus the United Nations of New York. Discovery still being used against Indian populations that just happen to be in the Syracuse area, but this is what opened up the entire West. When you deal with why they started to expand and go westward towards lands, it was the manifest destiny, which is the doctrine of discovery.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. So as they expanded out west, this was what they were pushing. Yes, the white man saying, we will now lay marks over all of this territory, reservation, if we don't kill you.
That's fact, brother.
Make sure that you're lifeless and not have any money. And it's our land now. So that's why that's very significant. These are laws that are still being enacted today.
That's a fact. I'm going to pull up actually a lot of this information I had shared with the conscious community in Harlem on April 10th, 2016. I'm going to pull up one of those slides right now.
Yes, sir.
See that?
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Yes, I can. Yes.
All right. Now this particular Pope. This is Pope Nicholas V, right? He's the one that issued Dum Diversas and Romanis Pontifex. So Romanis Pontifex extended to Christian nations of Europe dominion over so-called discovered Moorish territories. Why do I say Moorish territories? I'm going to show another slide in a second. You know, the whole quote unquote discovery of the New World starting in 1492 with Columbus, or 1455, and then in 1492 with Columbus and other explorers. These were military expeditions. That's what they were. They were military expeditions to take the whole, formerly controlled by the Moorish Empire. That's what it was, plain and simple.
Yes, sir.
It said encourage enslavement of native and non-Christian peoples in Africa and in the New World, all done as a constitution of the Crusades against the Moors. Dum Diversas, Romanis Pontifex, and Inter Caetera, also to Ilias Qui, became the foundation for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries, and the age of imperialism and manifest destiny, and the social construct caste system of the color code of race, which peaked in development and use in America. This is, I mean, again, this is powerful, brother. And again, I got to thank you for even having me on this show because, can you see this slide?
I can, the Carta Marina, yes.
Okay. This is very significant as it relates to what we just previously stated, because it says Now, one of the teachings that Noble Drew Ali, one of Noble Drew Ali's teachings that's hotly contested by the Afrocentrists is chapter 47 of the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America. The title of the chapter is Egypt, the Capital Empire of the Dominions of Africa, right? And in verse 7 of that chapter, it says, their dominion, talking about us, their dominion, meaning where they ruled, and inhabitation, where they physically were, extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the Great Atlantis. When we say the Great Atlantis, we're not talking about some mystical island that's submerged under the ocean. When we say the Great Atlantis, that was old language. We're talking about the area of the Americas, specifically the Caribbean.
Yes.
That's across the Great Atlantis, even into the present North, South, and Central America, also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake, which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. Now, this map is very interesting because it verifies those very words. Issued in 1525, an exposition of his theories and sea charts, the map is of interest as the sole instance in which North America is called part of Africa. And again, the date is 1525, so it was in the beginning of European Western expansion in medieval times, following our expulsion from Spain in 1492. So
and I think that's important also, because you dealt specifically with the, which was dope. You was dealing with the 1525 date. There was so much that was happening during that particular time.
Yes, sir.
And one has to really take a look at the mindset of kind of what was going on during that particular time and understand what makes it relevant. Now, you said 1525. Hold on, I got a good link that'll kind of back that up right quick, put some context to that.
I'm about to post it right now, bro.
Yes, sir.
Let's share it right now.
The name of this book is Servants of Allah Enslaved in the Americas, by Sylviane Adolphe, and she's a very good author.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is on page 36.
Mm-hmm.
She states that the Landinos were the first Africans to be introduced into the New World as early as 1501.
Ooh.
So these Landinos are the Africans that were living in Spain.
Yes, sir.
Moors.
Yes, sir.
So these Landinos were the first Africans to be introduced into the Americas. Into these American islands, in particular, they're talking like Jamaica in 1501 and what you call Haiti today, Hispaniola. Direct trade with the African coast was forbidden for fear that with Africans coming straight from Africa, Islam would find its way into the new colonies.
Ooh.
See that? That's what they were trying to prevent. With these Landinos coming straight from Spain into the New World, they already had Islam. They started making edicts saying, look, we can't be mixing this Islam with these Africans. Why do they say that? Because on Christmas morning, the very first slave rebellion was on Christopher Columbus's son's plantation. These were Moors that did the uprising on Christopher Columbus' son's plantation here in the Americas.
Wow.
So let's go into that.
Wow.
It deals with direct trade with the African coast was forbidden for fear that Africans coming straight from Africa, Islam will find its way into the new colonies. In the context of the period, the Spanish concern was wholly natural. Moorish control over Granada had ended only in 1492. So we're talking about 1501. The Moors lost rule in 1492, and hostility towards the occupying Muslims and Islam ran deep. Spain was cautious because it knew firsthand the dangers that Islam and the Muslims could represent. The crown's fear were well expressed in a royal order of 1543, which stated that the Muslims should not be introduced into Spain, America's possessions, because in the new land, like this one, where faith is only recently being sowed, it is necessary not to allow to spread the sect of Muhammad or any other. So the edict said that it's forbidden for Islam to be mixed with Africans. That's what they fear.
Ain't that something?
And that's what you have Negroes fighting against today. What are you about to say, brother?
Ain't that something, bro? Our brother, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, in a lecture that he did a few years ago in Philadelphia,
yes,
it dealt with this topic expertly. He said it wasn't, what Europeans fear, right? In this regard, wasn't just Islam. It was Islam in the hands of people that they call black. That's what they fear. It was what we did to them. You know what I'm saying? It was what we did to them, going from the 8th century up into the 15th century. That's what drives it.
It really is. I mean, trying to enslave a person who fears nothing but Allah is next to impossible when he's firm in faith. This is what they fear today.
Yes, sir.
Someone who's telling you Allahu Akbar and who really, really means it, it's like, death is something that you greet. It's something that you say, nice to meet you.
That's right.
Done. So
one of my friends said it like this, especially from the Christian perspective, right?
Right.
Or from the Western perspective. From the Western perspective, few of us in the West really understand the idea of true religion in that respect. True religion sees yourself as a point in a continuum of past and future. So your body is just a thing of consequence.
Correct.
In the West,
exactly. We're gonna preserve it at all costs.
That's right, brother. That's right. That's right.
Right. Cowards. Right. Right.
Yeah, brother. That's it. You hit it right on the nose. Right. And that the way, for instance, C.M. Bey talked about in his literature, that it's this history that we're talking about right now, that the Western status quo knows very well, and it drives their psyche.
Right.
See, I want to say this real quick. I want to take a quick departure and say this to just the listeners in general. What you're hearing, we talk a lot in the conscious community about being kings and queens in the old days, and then now we're reduced to this lowly state here in America. But there's always that huge disconnect. Please understand that the topic today and what we're talking about, and Moorish identity, the connection of our people to Moorish identity in general, is the missing link that ties everything together and explains things fully. Without it, you will not understand the circumstances of your condition. Just simply.
That's a very valid point, brother. And just in closing up this last thought, again, it emphasizes what the resistance is and why it's so important to keep things disconnected. Near that last paragraph of the page, Spanish reluctance notwithstanding, Bozales, or people coming directly from Africa, that was their name for people coming directly from Africa. Because again, people think that all the first slaves came directly from Africa. No, the first slaves came from Spain, and they had a specific name. Go ahead, brother. Oh, yes, sir. Please do.
Going back to the as you pointed out, the time period.
Right.
1492, the Moors are told to get out of Dodge, either convert to Christianity or get out of Dodge.
Right.
A few years after that, there's a royal order saying, we can't have Islam in the New World. Right? And the first 1492 to 1503, come on. You know what I'm saying? Come on. That's 9 years.
Right.
9 years.
9 years.
You got the very Moors The very Moors that were expelled out of Spain are now in the New World, people. Come on, figure it out.
And think about it, like we touched on earlier.
Yes, sir.
Rule for over 700 years, naming themselves.
Yes, sir.
But as soon as they fell out of power, did somebody else give them another name?
Nope. Give them the same name, brother.
Well, when the Christians defeated the Moors, didn't they have another name? Didn't they rename them?
Oh, absolutely.
They named them like, the Spanish equivalent of Little More, right?
That's right, brother. Okay, correct. Yes.
Right. So they yes. So they renamed them.
Yes, sir.
See, new ruler, new name. So when the Moors ruled themselves, they had their name.
That's right.
When someone defeated them, they renamed them. That's the difference. Feel me? Okay. So again, the Spanish reluctance, yes, sir. Bozales, or people coming straight directly from Africa, again, are different people than the Landinos.
Yes.
And understand the difference between Landinos and Bozales, and then understand what some more say. Oh, you're showing right here 2 examples. You got Landinos, who they just said were the first people that came to the Americas, and then you have the Bozales, who came from Africa to the New World. So that alone is 2 different kinds of people.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right, brother.
So the Bozales, and people coming straight from Africa, were introduced because the trade in Landinos could not meet the demand. Nicholas de Ovando, the governor of Hispaniola, which is what you call Haiti today, considered trade in Bozales a bad policy and asked for a complete stop to the importation of Africans in 1503.
Wow.
After the first slave uprising in the New World, led by the Wolof in 1522, a royal decree on May 11th, 1526, specifically forbade the introductions of Wolofs, Negroes from the Levant or the Middle East, those who had been raised with the Moors. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
From where? From where, brother? The Levant?
Yeah, from the Levant, brother. Yeah, from the Levant or the Middle East, those who have been raised with the Moors. They forbid, if you were raised with the Moors, you are not allowed to come to the Americas, because y'all was always uprising and killing people.
That's right. That's right.
So they had to start forcing another religion on them in order to make them docile. You feel me? So this was by royal order. The royal decree, again, was made in May 11th, 1526.
Wow.
So they can just simply look it up and see what the decree says. So that's why I wanted to emphasize that. You've been cut off from Islam. You've been cut off from the identity of Moors and the influence of Moors systematically. And we've showed you all of the information over our years of research, even going to the slave plantations and showing you how you were made an African American, this generic sardine term. Obviously, when you had an ethnic identity, which they show you in the log books, and then they take and erase these logs and then give you a generic name, they have, for all intent and purposes, done genocide upon you.
Isn't that something? That's a fact, brother. That's a fact. And now here's what's interesting too. Some people would ask, well, wait a minute. Well, if the whole Moorish history was that strong and that powerful, why didn't they erase that history? Wouldn't that be a more efficient way of erasing our history? Just erase that history? No. I'm going to tell you, and this is why. Like I made the point earlier, the old world Western civilization is plain and simple Moorish civilization. Old world Western civilization gave birth to the new world Western civilization. So for them to erase Moorish history, they would erase their own. So when you hear Europeans speak about the Moors, they speak with high respect and high regard. And they do so openly, knowing that they have totally separated and disjointed you from that history.
There's a brother, his name is Dr. Issa.
Yes.
And brother Dr. Issa said that he was in the back room of the diplomatic room. I think they were greeting some Ghanaian dignitaries.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in this diplomatic room. I don't know if he said it was in Washington, D.C. or not, but he was with Condoleezza Rice. This is when she was in charge. And Dr. Issa said that when he looked up in this, there was about 30 people in the room. And he looked up and there was this huge painting of a Moor right there in the diplomatic room. It had been about like 12 to 15 feet high. And it was this huge Moor right there that nobody sees. And it's in the diplomatic room that greets the people when you go into this private room. He said it was very, the furniture, the whole look, the paintings and stuff. But he said the biggest painting right there is what he saw. And he said he had a picture of it, but he doesn't know what happened to it. He said he snapped a picture of it. He snuck a picture. But that's what Dr. Esau had stated. He said the Moors was right. It raced through his mind when he said that. The Moors was right.
What?
Yeah, so y'all can study up on Dr. Esau and maybe find his quote on that.
That's incredible. Wow. That's something else.
Absolutely.
I want to pull up find it, because again, we can talk about, you hear people, you hear us talk about what the European calls white slavery. Right. But it's not really real. It's not really real to us, because it's such a big departure from what we've been conditioned to believe.
Correct.
What we've been told. It's such a huge departure. Now, of course, you don't hear, and it's like C.M. Bey said, this history drives the psyche of the powers that be, of the status quo. It drives the psyche, but they don't talk about it openly. Now, we're going to hear more talk about it in the public. Right? Because the people that do talk about it somewhat openly are the white supremacist groups.
Correct.
Because that represents their justification.
Yes.
And so, but the reason why it's not talked so openly is because to admit it defeats white supremacy itself. Because white supremacy is based on the premise that they were always superior. Right. So to speak to the actual fact of our people, the Moors, widely enslaving Europeans, it tells the truth, and it knocks the legs out from white supremacy, because it admits that you were not always superior. Right. So it admits it. So let me see. Go ahead.
And they're very curious about that history too. In fact, in about an hour, I'll be speaking with a gentleman who's going to be doing a documentary on indentured servitude. His last name is Ritter. And he's asking me to interview. He came across my video on White Slavery 101, what they never taught you in history class. He came across that, and he reached out to me to ask some questions and come on his blog talk show dealing with the white servitude, indentured servitude.
Salutes to you on that particular video. I mean, that thing is like beyond viral, bro.
Yeah, it's at about like almost 260,000. It's a very, very good video, very popular video. And somebody else made a copy of it, and it didn't get like 150,000 views off of that. I gave him permission to use it, but I don't know, man. I might have to.
You know what I mean? Exactly, bro. You have to get him to sign another bag.
Yeah, get my cut. Get my cut.
Right. So this was another slide that I had from that debate last year. It's the book Barbarian Cruelty, an eyewitness account of white slavery under the Moors. And I'm sure you're familiar with this particular source. But one of the quotes says it was during the 1600s that Barbary corsairs or pirates from the Barbary coast of North Africa, today Algeria, Libya, and Morocco, were at their most active and terrible, with the full support of the Moorish rulers of North Africa. These Muslim slavers raided southern Europe and the Atlantic European coast, Britain and Ireland almost at will. Most estimates based on the size of the Moorish cities indicate that by 1780, that's pretty late.
Absolutely.
Right? Relatively. That indicate that by 1780, at least 1.2 million Europeans had been seized. This remarkable book, first published in 1693, contains one of the few genuine eyewitness accounts written by a white slave who managed to escape. Its graphic description of the lot of white slaves, the Moorish relations with the Jews of North Africa, and conditions of the time and the author's eventual escape cast a dramatic and nowadays oft-hidden light upon the time when whites were enslaved. And then there's the other reference that I mentioned earlier, Diplomatic Relations of the United States and the Barbary Powers by Ray Irwin. This is what he had to say. By the middle of the 16th century, corsairs were raiding as far north as the Straits of Dover, snatching captives from the very shores of the British Isles. In the course of 3 centuries, that's 300 years. It was estimated that Algerines alone captured 600,000 slaves, while as late as 1798, a Tunisian foray carried nearly 1,000 people off a small Italian island, completely depopulating it. The insolence of these piratical states, fostered by an almost unaccountable submission to their pretensions by the Christian nations of Europe. Let's put that in basic layman's terms.
Right.
Our forefathers were bugging out. We were dumbing out something crazy. Right. And the European powers at that time, the European nations at that time, had an unaccountable submission to us. That's what it says. The insolence of these piratical states, fostered by an almost unaccountable submission to their pretensions by the Christian nations of Europe, has been strikingly exhibited in the conduct of the Bey of Algiers toward Captain Bainbridge on his arrival there in the frigate George Washington with the annual tribute. The Bey replied, quote, "You pay me tribute, by which you become my slaves, and therefore I have the right to order you as I think proper," end quote. All the tributary nations of Europe submitted, so he added, to render him like services.
Dope.
Yeah, that's pretty.
So, yeah, but and people need to understand the relevance of that particular part of the history. Now, one of the significant people in like the older Moorish history, his name was Jan Jensen.
Yes, sir.
Jan Jensen was a Turkish Moor, and this Turkish Moor is the ancestor to Jackie Onassis Kennedy.
Ah, I got the link up.
So, okay, so the question is asked: was Jackie O our first black first lady? Let's go into the information in the highlighted section down there. It says Jackie O, perhaps America's most admired first lady. A lot of people bite Jackie O style. Descended from a family known as the Van Sales, who were described as mulatto in the 17th century. This family traces lineage to a Dutch mariner named Jan Jensen, who turned Turk, and called going native than common history reveals. It is widely believed that Jensen fathered 2 children, Anthony and Abraham Van, by a Moorish concubine with his white wife. Anthony Van Sale was exiled to territory across the river, and he became Brooklyn's first settler.
That's right, brother.
Until a few decades ago, this property adjoining Coney Island was called Turk's Island, after Anthony Van Sale. The term Turk in this day being synonymous with Moor.
That's right.
The descendant John Van Sale de Grasse, born in 1825, was the first Black American formally educated as a doctor.
That's fact.
when Jackie Kennedy was asked about her Vancelli roots during the height of the civil rights movement, she called her ancestors Jewish. Of course, her socialite father, born in 1891, was nicknamed Black Jack. Bouvier, for his swarthy complexion. In the 1960s, journalists described the First Lady's features as French, earning her the cover page of countless magazines, including film and fan publications. Not only Jackie, but Wellborn's Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Vanderbilt, and thus Anderson Cooper, are Vancelli descendants.
Yes, sir.
It's all about the bloodlines. It's all about the bloodlines. So the Moorish roots that run through this, it started in the era that Brother Sharif was just talking about, as far as the conquering and the taking and the enslaving. But people need to study that Jackie Onassis or that Jackie Kennedy history and understand the Moorish connection and all of that, because it's very influential as far as how first families are set up. You know, they find the interconnection of the bloodlines of how it runs and how it's so pervasive in the families.
That's the whole pedigree game. And as you just shown here with the Vancellis, which is a crucial piece that certain Europeans, they protect, they hide or protect that whole thing, especially with the Vancelli family. You know, this I mean, that's a big deal. You hear people talk about ruling families and blue bloods and all of that other stuff. And this ties into the point we made earlier about how the new world is founded upon the old world, which is Moorish. This comes right down to the bloodline. It comes right down to the, what's his name? David McCritchie in his book Ancient and Modern Britain, volumes 1 and 2.
Brilliant book. Yeah, 1 and 2, yes.
He talks about John Wayne and how racist John Wayne is, how overtly racist John Wayne was. But then when you look at John Wayne's history, his original name was MacDougall, and which is an old Scottish it has Moorish ties. So the author was kind of poking fun at him, for him, being racist. He'd have to be racist with his own reflection in the mirror.
Which, of course, they've also had to remind Arnold about that also.
Absolutely. Right down to his last name.
Yeah, exactly. He's made some of those comments in the past, and we have to remind him that Schwarzen means black. We know what Negger means. So his Schwarzenegger roots, he needs a reminder every now and then.
I mean, it's powerful that you brought up the article about Jackie Onassis and her relationship, to Jenzun Vancelli. I think that's a powerful direction that the listeners can go to, is to research Anthony Jenzun Vancelli. Because you'll never get that history.
Correct.
In the mainstream.
You have to know what to look for. Correct.
You have to know what to look for. And once again, that underscores, and emphasizes the significance of Noble Drew Ali.
Correct.
Founding the movement here in America, because by connecting you, our people, to that title, to the identifier Moorish-American, it connects us automatically to a history and a heritage and a bloodline that you've been separated from. And number one, you've been separated from. Number two, what some of the top families, ruling families of the world, still rule by.
Correct. And the Shriners laugh at you. The Shriners know who you are. You don't know who you are. They'll walk around with more on their fez. They'll walk around with all kinds of Islamic names all over on their head. They'll have Bey on their fez. They'll have all of this history right in front of you, and they know that you're so foolish that you argue amongst yourself to remain a slave. Like you argue generic. So when we try to tell you that African American, that just means Sahara Desert. Desert. You've not identified yourself at all. You're fighting for a generic label.
Right.
When the people who know walk in front of you every single day and make moves. At the end of the day, it's really impertinent what you call yourself. It doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, Cherokees don't care that somebody else named them Cherokee or Creeks. They don't care. They still getting that casino money. They don't care what call me what you want. Right. Just make sure you call me with that bank check on time.
Right.
You feel me? So the things that people are arguing about and separating themselves about and unfriending about and bashing each other about, other people could care less.
They could care less, brother. That's right. And now, and you know, with the detractors, it's like you're looking at a movement that got started in America in 1913.
Yes.
It's an identity movement. Yeah, it's a number of other things, but most importantly, the purpose of identity is to bind people together and to unify them. How can you turn your nose up to any unification effort for our people here in America? Any. You know, that's insane.
And I think that's the difference of someone who has a mindset of freedom, or someone who has a mindset of independence versus somebody who really doesn't. Like, it's foreign to them when you explain to them that you don't ask people for your title. You take it. And then once you take it, you put other people on, and then you maybe give them a wiser path that they can take. But they can't even wrap their mind around the fact that someone is bold enough to do that. Like, it sounds alien to them.
Ain't that something?
On a name and a title and an identity.
Right.
And when that's foreign to me. That's foreign to me. Like, why would you call yourself something that you're not unless you're like an entertainer? You know, if you're a rapper, I'm going to call you whatever your rap name is. And out of my respect for you, even if you're a member of a certain community, I'm going to call you out of respect what you want to be called. But in truth, you're so fake, you can't even identify the real. Like, there's nothing that me and you are going to be able to identify with, because everything you do is put on.
Yo, you know how powerful what you just said? Like, you just said it, you used the perfect words, put on, right? We're talking about identity here, right? Ask any Chinese American, Italian American, or Mexican American, when are they not American, Italian American, or Mexican American? Like, here's what's crazy about what you're saying, bro. Most of our people are so far removed from real positive identity that what you're talking about and what I'm talking about is foreign to them. But having a particular pseudonym, right? My name is Akbar Khalid Amin Ra, but my government is totally respectable. Like, that's absolutely insane.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But then you want to, man. Like you said, it's put on.
Therein lies the problem, you know?
Yes.
And like I said, God bless them, man. All you can try to do is just, you know, try to tell people truth, and then kind of see how they take it. But if they're fighting tooth and nail and making my job harder, I just cut you off and keep it moving.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to stop anything, any move that I'm making, any money I'm making, any influence that I'm striving to get, or anything I'm trying to learn from someone else. It's not going to affect me whatsoever. So I'll just remain being a student and walking my path and, you know, applying my success.
And it's interesting, see, because you speaking this way, and even that sentiment you just expressed from the position or from the perspective of where you are, which is not as a member of the organization, the Moorish Undisputed Champs of America, but now from the position of the Moorish Undisputed Champs of America, we say the exact same thing. What a lot of the detractors try to put on us is that we're proselytizing, is that we're trying to make everybody this one particular thing, and we're not. You know, Noble Drew said, "I need strong men and women who believe their condition can be better." Well, here's the thing. If you're talking unity out of one side of your mouth, but on the other side of your mouth, and please forgive me, listeners, if this sounds condescending. I don't mean this to be condescending. I do mean this to be real. Let's be real. If we're going to talk unity, then we can't be talking about, well, my name is, my name is Thoth, ISIS, whatever, but my government name is Reginald Johnson. I'm sorry.
Right. Right.
We can't do that. And so if you think like that, and if you think that's okay, the prophet said, I need strong men and women who believe their condition can be better. But if you think that way, number one, you're not strong enough. Number two, you don't believe your condition can be better because you settled for a pseudo identity. You know what I'm saying?
Very comfortable in it. Yes. Yeah. And even, someone's comfort level in it, that's their particular journey and their path. But then you actively work against people who are doing it. That's what makes you
that's crazy.
A weirdo. Yeah.
It's crazy. But I get it though. I get it because even on a lot of times they do it and they're not even conscious, but on a subconscious level, there's a part of them that realizes that's a hot fire right there.
Yes.
To move, to even consider that means I got to stick my feet in the water.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I got to actually, I got to be committed. Right. And you know as well as I do, bro. Back in the day when we were running around in Syracuse with our heads half chopped off with this stuff, because we was young guns with it. It was all or nothing.
It was all or nothing, and it becomes so second nature after a while. It just becomes a part of who you are. Right. Some people are afraid of obtaining their title.
Yes. Out
of fear of what their own family will say.
Oh man.
And that's like to live in that kind of fear.
Yes.
That's foreign to me.
Yes, sir.
That's foreign to me. My mother calls me who I am. My grandmother called me who I am.
Brother, my mother
dare call me out of my name.
That's right. My mother calls me by my name. And like, remember how we used to say it back in the day? They say, "Oh, you changed your name?" Nah, I didn't have a name before. I had a label.
Right.
I just corrected everybody. I have a name now. You need to get one.
I got a name and a title now. You feel me? Bro. So for some of them, they're outside of their comfort zone just for old friends to walk up on them like, "Hey," call you about whatever your government is, because all you know you. But you feel so uncomfortable. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy or that girl who, oh, here you go again. So that just means you're just a temporary dude in your life. Personality, and your own people will know you on that stuff again.
Yo, you sound like the skit on the Nas album, right? Where the chicks was talking about, oh, he on that guy body stuff again.
Not that white stuff. Where the real niggas at? Yeah. Black girl lost. You feel me? So it's it's like, just do you, be you, and be real with it. If you can't be real with it, then respect those.
This is what I implore, even the detractors. Just take a look at it. I mean, this thing, you know it and I know it, where it's like, how can you how can you even fix your intellectual mouth to speak out against something so well documented? It's just too well documented. And the difference is that we, again, were blessed and honored to have our eyes and thoughts directed in this direction to research. You know what I mean? And these, it's like, look at it. Just look at it with an open mind. You don't got to agree. Just look at it. You made a simple point. That simple point of, okay, this group of people ruled Europe, ruled the known world for 700 some odd years. But you mean to tell me that somebody else named them and they were the ruling party? Get out of here.
It doesn't. It's impossible to. How is it that America's only 250 years old, but yet you're claiming that you have an identity? You're claiming that you can identify yourself, but here's somebody else who ruled a land for over 700 years.
Right.
You just was able to vote
right
a day ago.
Right.
You was giving out of separate water fountains a day ago.
There you go.
But yet you so free that you're saying that you can self-identify. I'm so-and-so. but yet somebody else who ruled for over 700 years had to be named by somebody else. You sound stupid. You sound so foolish.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
By the analogy that you try to make yourself. You just can't fathom the fact that someone can rule themselves. That's foreign to you.
Or that
was beaten into you.
Your forefathers could rule themselves. Like, come on.
Correct. Could we erase the West African history of the origin of the Moors into Al-Andalus? They try to erase that, but it's so well documented that it can't be denied. It can't be denied.
That's right.
Not at all. Or from Barbary. And the history tells you that. Brother Sharif, do you have anything that you want to leave in parting as far as Moor as a social political birthright? I think we dealt with that in depth. We dealt with the different bloodlines and the physical parts of the Moorish history. We even dealt with specific cases of the Moorish bloodlines. Do you have any parting wisdom that you'd like to give to the brother?
Yes, sir. I just want to just wrap up the whole idea, the whole, thought on, Moorish identity or Moorish-American identity, as it relates to sociopolitics. As what we have with the Moorish Empire, people, is an African diasporic political entity. Let me repeat that. An African diasporic political entity where you had a ruling party and subjects, but all of them had a part in the political entity called the Moorish Empire. Now, just think, the only people on the planet today that more accurately or closely resemble and represent that same African diaspora is the so-called Black and African American in America today.
Facts.
This is why when we start talking about our history and what we were before slavery, the status quo says, oh, well, you belong to different tribes and you belong to different groups. And we just, we don't know what you were exactly. And that was lost in the history. Knowing good and well that the empire controlled the whole area at that time period. So they omit that part. So they don't have to talk about it. And that would the history, the missing link that would reconnect you to your glorious past. And so that's it right there. Without understanding the social political connection of nationality, even the ethnic, even the ethno-historic piece is going to throw people, because they'll try to do as the brothers try to do with you, Ish, and say, oh, well, that was just a few individuals. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't an issue. Right. That was just a few individuals, brother. And it's like,
Right.
That's what I wanted to leave the people with right there. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, take your place in the affairs of men, which really is a call to get back to where you were before you fell.
Right.
Not only in our forefathers in the affairs of men, we dictated the affairs of men.
Yes, sir.
In an autographed picture to one of his old students had the quote, or he had the statement. It said circumstances with a question mark, and then under it said, hell, I make circumstances. That's what our forefathers did.
Right.
That's what they and so we want to get back to that. So in getting back to that, you have to understand the ethno-historic piece. You also have to understand the socio-political piece. You have to expand your education. You can't just be within in the European closed-minded stable of, oh, well, you guys were just wandering around with bones in your nose and we snatched you up and civilized you.
Right.
Yeah. So that was that.
And then that quick narrative that we've been fed, over the years, that's being dismantled so quickly that people are asking the questions. So when they do ask the questions,
For sure.
I would like for them to be able to go to Ali's Men and the works that you do. I think it's very get an accurate history from accurate historians and people who are not just limited to history, but those who are active in the modern day.
Yes, sir.
Be it the things that are going on in individual cities or districts. This is very, very important. So make sure that you support Ali's Men. Make sure you support the works of Sharif Ishmael Bey. And make sure that you support Honor Rock Squad African Moorish Scholarship. Subscribe to this page, Vegas View 77. Make sure you subscribe. We have a couple thousand subscriptions already. This is one of my older pages that I decided to revive back up. Post anything up here in many years, but you'll find some very various topics on this particular page. Some of the views are dealing with the current events or the historical events. I just try to get I just told David I would talk to him in just a moment. He had called me. So I'm going to, again, be dealing with this upcoming documentary and on a blog talk show. And Brother Sharif, do you have any upcoming projects that you're going to be doing with Ali's Men that you can kind of share with the public?
Sure. We're going to be speaking a number of us, Brother Tahaka Bey with Moorish World TV and Ali's Men. We're going to be converging on Rock Hill, South Carolina, May 6th. The title of the event is called Citizenship, the Road to Full Liberation. And in other words, how, Prophet Noble Drew Ali's civic agenda and how it's applied in today's era, 2017 moving forward. And we're going to be, there are going to be a number of speakers. Brother the Alende Il brothers are going to speak. Brother Tahaka Bey is going to speak. Sheik Portisale is going to speak. And I'm going to speak. And we're going to talk, I specifically am going to talk about another part of the hidden history of our people in America, and that's Reconstruction, and talk about, how
that's crucial.
Yes, sir. And how that fueled, that turned up the heat on quote unquote white rage on our people. A lot of the sentiments that we see today, as that the status quo directs at our people, didn't start so much with slavery. It started after slavery, after the Civil War. When you're looked at as property, you want to protect the property. But when that whole dynamic is taken out of the equation, as what happened in 1865, and then your voting rights in your country, or what you believe in your country, are suspended. And those people that you counted as property or less than human now are exercising those same voting rights that you had, that yours have been suspended, in placing their own people in office and running the South.
Right.
I don't want to give it all away, but this is what happened from 1865 to 1877 with the Compromise of 1877. And then after the Compromise of 1877, you saw the sharp rise of the KKK and other groups. And the first thing on their agenda was to destroy the political power of our people in the South. All that saying that racism is real, and racism, the primary objective of racism isn't to kill you. You don't throw the batteries out of your battery-operated appliance.
That's right.
It's not the main objective is not to kill you. The main objective is to keep you from fully participating in American society as an.
That's excellent, brother. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I definitely want to thank you again, Brother Sharif, for taking the time to build with us this evening with the More Than Words family. And I want to let the people know that make sure you support Moorish World TV and Brother Tahaka Bey. Make sure you support the different projects that the brothers are working on, as well as just your local Moorish Science Temple of America. Whatever's going to make you to walk that path and get a good, firm foundation of your identity as a Moorish-American. I say support that, support that and go and get that knowledge and information. Questions, please feel free to look at some of the brothers and sisters that you may see as knowledgeable. Ask those questions so you can get some clarity on it to make your path a little bit easier. I think this is a forum that's set up for those who may be looking for a lot of accurate Moorish history and be able to build and to teach us also. So this is the forum that's set up for that. And I want to thank Brother Sharif again for coming in And I'd like to thank the public for taking time this evening. So peace and blessings to you all.